Hello everyone, welcome back to Newsfront. Yeah, there's a lot on this week. We've got Bellator, we've got the PFL, we've even got a UFC pay-per-view. And Tony Ferguson said some crazy shit. Alright, so first things first, Tony Ferguson is back this week. He's fighting on Saturday and he's not happy. Yeah, turns out Dana White privilege, that shit ain't a joke.
But, is it a little more exciting to fight the guy with Dana White privilege, right? I mean, you nailed it with him.
I don't think that shit's very funny.
No?
You do, maybe.
Unless you ask Mike Chandler, of course.
I'm sorry, Tony, but that Dana White privilege line might be the funniest thing that has ever been said on a microphone in the context of mixed martial arts.
More on him later. At the UFC Media Day, he talked about being underpaid, among quite a few other things, actually.
I thought that Khabib would actually take a fight. The pussy's still scared.
It kind of all started this week when Dana White came out and said that boxers are being overpaid. Tony thinks Dana's being overpaid. What do you think of that?
Dana said something the other day where he said that boxers are overpaid. You know, I'm not going to say stay in your lane, but man, that guy's overpaid too.
What are you not going to say?
Baldy, but I'm not going to say it. He honestly feels like the UFC are trying to retaliate against him.
I mean, I asked, to fight, Magomedov over in Abu Dhabi. I said, give me a couple hours. They made it seem like I didn't want to fight. Afterwards, they wanted to make me wait for a fight for a while. And then they started to sign contracts, right? They wanted to send me a contract that said an extension on my contract. I'm used to that since The Ultimate Fighter, so I'm going to be real. The tactics are there. I'm not here to moan. I'm here to get the job done, man.
I think he's talking about Makhachev here. Makhachev, Magomedov, yeah. But there was no follow-up question or any more details. But essentially, it seems like when Hooker filled in short notice for that fight, well, it was offered to Tony. He wanted to think about it, and the UFC thought he took a bit too long. And so this apparently led to contract issues, extensions, and kind of a dispute. According to him, going back as far as tough, we fought on that show at 170, and apparently the UFC convinced him or told him that he should fight at 155, even though it wasn't good for his body and it wasn't really his thing.
They've been making me cut weight. They made me feel like I was inadequate going up to 170 again. They made me feel like I could not do that. They made me feel like I had to lose weight. I don't care about how I was treating my body or how I was treating my mind. It's kind of fucked up, pretty much.
Tony also mentioned he wants to try pro wrestling, boxing, lots of other stuff really, but the UFC is restricting him from being able to do that.
I want to go do all these couple things, but then I have this guy right here acting like a fucking drug dealer telling me I can't go and do this shit.
He said he didn't know he had a broken foot in the Justin fight. The Oliveira fight he took as a favor to the UFC and didn't train any BJJ at all, apparently. And Dariush, well, he said he just wasn't mentally prepared. And speaking of injuries, he actually brought up the UFC 223 cable incident where he tripped over backstage and injured his knee, got pulled from the fight with Khabib.
It comes down to that, and then I'm gonna get stripped of my title because I fucking took a bad fall in an accident. I should have sued.
Jesus Christ.
You probably still can, Tony. And it's coming from all directions, really. Anderson Silva this week was talking about how the UFC don't respect the legacy of the older fighters. He's planning on coming out fast this weekend, is looking for a quick finish.
Which is either through a knockout or through a submission. I'm not a late starter.
Give me sand. Give me sand.
Speaking about Dana White's favourite fighter, Chandler came out this week, obviously had his own media interviews as well. He was asked the question about whether or not Tony is perhaps declining a little bit towards the end of his career. He actually gave a really good answer that you probably want to take a listen to.
I'll be completely honest with you, and maybe this is my chosen ignorance, but I chose to be ignorant to the fact that I was going to accept that he may have lost a step, that maybe he's getting slower, that maybe his performances are getting worse, because those are all excuses that you can put in your chamber to not train hard. In my mind, he's the toughest Tony Ferguson. He's the Tony Ferguson on that 12-fight win streak.
When talking about Tony's career, Chandler said, yeah, you're going to take tough fights, then you're going to take tough losses. But he did say he was the first fighter he wanted to fight when he joined the UFC. Be careful what you wish for, Chandler. El Kukui is coming. Mike feels like he's going into enemy territory given the fan base size of Tony Ferguson fans, but he's still going to hunt for a quick finish and be swinging for the fences. For the main event, he's picking Gaethje and expects to be fighting him for a title in a rematch later on in the year. But I'm pretty sure Makhachev and Dariush are ranked above him in the rankings, so he might be waiting a while. There are other people in this weight class. During the pandemic, he didn't have much to do.
I didn't really have a lot to do.
So he said he basically shut himself in his garage, trained, and just studied all of the fighters on the UFC roster. He's 36 now, but he says he's training harder than ever, and he also sets a higher standard than anyone.
Nobody lives the lifestyle that I live, and I'm 36 years old, and I'm competing at an extremely high level because of it. Why has my body lasted so long? It's great supplementation, it's great sleep, it's taking care of my body and treating myself like a professional athlete.
He also said everybody wants to see him in a 5-round fight with the winner of the main event.
And there's not an MMA fan alive that doesn't want to see me rematch either of those guys, Charles Oliveira and especially Justin Gaethje, in a 5-round title fight.
Is that what you want to see? Are you everyone? I know Dana wants to see it. When asked, Justin Gaethje said that he doesn't think Oliveira is as dangerous as Khabib. Yeah, he says the guy that quit is still somewhere deep down inside Oliveira, and you know, Khabib never showed any signs of that, so according to him, you can't even compare the two.
His ability to take damage is not the same. The same Charles is still there. Same Charles that fought Cub Swanson, same Charles that fought Donald Cerrone. Choices were made in that by him, and the choice to quit was made. And I'm going to give him that choice on Saturday night. I guarantee that.
He is on a 10-fight win streak, though, so at some point he's going to have to change his opinion. Unless he beats him, obviously, then, I mean, it doesn't matter, does it? He did acknowledge, though, that Charles Oliveira is dangerous, especially when hurt, and has a great ability to come back in fights.
That is normal for a fighter. When you choose fight over flight, that's the only way. If they're awake, they are dangerous, and someone on the brink of dying is the most dangerous, especially when they choose fight.
But he reckons there's going to be a car crash, and according to him, he's the one with the most force. You might have seen Diaz and himself go back and forth during social media this week, and had a little bit more to say on media day.
Was there ever talks of you and Nate fighting?
Of course not. I heard he turned down Khabib about 20 times. He doesn't even have the power to shut someone's light out on accident.
He basically said, yeah, he's jealous because he'll never be a world champion.
That motherfucker's lost over 15 times. Like, come on. And I think he's jealous because he's done. He'll never be here. He'll never be fighting for a world championship.
Actually, only 13, Justin, okay? Charles didn't really say much during his media day. He's becoming sort of that quiet killer these days during fight week. He seemed pretty confident and he's not worried at all about Gaethje's taunts and looks like he's going to get the job done.
He fought a guy for 3 rounds. I knocked him out with my left hand. So whatever the hype is, whatever the talk is, I don't listen to. The champion is called Charles Oliveira is going to stay this way.
It's not often that fighters look ahead, but he's set on going to Sao Paulo and defending his belt in Brazil.
However, I would love to be able to fight in Sao Paulo in Brazil to defend again my belt in my house.
Rose had a fair amount to say. She talked about her mental state and the changes she went through after losing to Andrade.
I am a completely different person. I think over 8 years you should be getting better, you know, like physically growing up and stuff, but spiritually I feel like I'm just like totally transformed and really just in love with every moment and really blessed.
Fighting is now something that's 100% spiritual for her. She talked about her mental coaching and how much that has helped her, as well as her discipline, her dedication, and just everything coming together.
It's really about discipline, consistency, and sticking to the game plan for this fight. Just focusing on the present and focusing on just performing my best, and then really it's like, when I do my best, y'all know I'm the best.
She also acknowledged it will be a huge accomplishment to avenge this loss, and you know, she knows she's the best, but is she the greatest? She also said she's pretty happy this time around to be fighting before Justin because, yeah, as a teammate, I'm sure his fights make you very nervous.
I'm very happy that I'm fighting before him. I'm like a huge fan of Charles, but I see him coming out as a champion, and I'm really excited to be able to share that moment with him.
Carla didn't say too much at all. Of course, she talked more about her wedding coming up the following week of the fight.
It's really reassuring to know that, hey, like, no matter what, I'm still, you know, committing to the person that I love and I get to spend the rest of my life with. You know, it is a really special moment for me.
She even said the first Rose fight felt like a lifetime ago, and I'm not surprised.
So much has gone down since then, and, you know, my journey as a fighter and just in life in general.
She also had this to say, which is a pretty honest take from any challenger challenging for a title.
I definitely feel that I wasn't hyped into this fight, or I didn't talk my way into this fight. I feel like I 100% earned it with making that statement. My last fight really solidified it for me.
Speaking of honesty, she also talked about how people are overlooking her.
I know I'm the underdog going into this fight. You know, for me, it really doesn't matter what people think because I'm going in there to win that fight.
And she's here to prove on Saturday that she wasn't just a fluke champion.
Hey, I'm still here. I'm still like #1. It wasn't a fluke back then. Like, it would really just solidify me as a fighter and my skill set, you know, over these years.
We also have a Legends fight on Saturday between Cowboy and Joe Lozon, and things got pretty emotional during the interview.
Oh man, it's not me, it's my son. I can't wait to walk out of that tunnel and see the look on his face, you know. Can't wait so he knows finally what I do, you know?
Without saying too much, it's kind of clear Cowboy feels like this is his last chance to put on a big show for the fans.
Going in there and fucking letting this old dog eat one more time.
So let's move on to fire announcements and roster removals, starting with the bad news. 16 names came up on the list yesterday at Roster Watch on Twitter. If you're not following them, that's a good way to keep up with who's being cut from the UFC. The Purge. Because there's too many to name, I'm just gonna read them. Chris Montino, the guy that fought Sugar Sean O'Malley. Yep, 2 fights, he's gone. They're doing construction! Dean Barry, he's the guy that just eye-gouged Mike Jackson. Kevin Kroom, Austin Hubbard, Devontae Smith. Oh, and both of Paddy's opponents as well. Luigi Vendramini and Kazula Vargas. I guess Paddy just smashed him, right? Smashed him out of the UFC. Also, a bunch of fights from Pivot Gate were leaked. If you don't know what that is, the Pivot podcast basically filmed inside the headquarters at the UFC, and we saw all of the fights on the wall. I guess nobody thought to cover those up. Here we go. Bontarine versus Manel Cop. O'Malley versus Munoz. Lawler versus Barberina. Strickland versus Pereira. Fiziev versus RDA. Garbrandt versus Honey Yaya.
You look great. Yeah.
Volk versus Max 3, although Ariel Hawani already talked about that one. Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith. Garn versus Tuivasa. Santos versus Jamal Hill. Most of those fights were on that wall, but there are 2 big fights we're still waiting to hear about. Yeah, Jones versus Stipe, maybe in September. And Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz, apparently. Notably, Max versus Volk 3 wasn't. Also, apparently, Burns called out Masvidal on Twitter. It's not an official announcement, but looks like they're gonna make that fight as well. To quote Masvidal, sounds good. So we got a bunch of MMA events happening this weekend. Yep, kicking things off on Friday in France, we've got Bellator, and it is Chet Congo versus Ryan Bader for the heavyweight title. That first fight kind of sucked, didn't it? No? Also on that card, we've got Romero taking on late notice replacement Alex Polizzi. Yeah, he was supposed to be fighting Melvin Manhoef, but sucks, doesn't it? Yoel did say he wants Mousasi at 185 as well, so be done with all this 205 nonsense. And Bader just signed a new 4-fight deal. PFL is also happening on Friday. Yep, it's headlined by the returning Kayla Harrison taking on Mo Not Kina. I don't know who that is. The absolute badass Ray Cooper III is also back on Friday, looking to take on Carlos Leal. Yep, that's the future champion right there. Other notable names on the card as well, we've got Pettis, McDonald, and Julia Budd. They all used to be really good. This was a busy episode of the news. There was a lot on. There's a lot going on in the background, but enjoy the fights this weekend. It's going to be good. And join us for the live companion at MMA On Point.